Let's play a quick game. I am going to say 3 words and I want you to tell me the first game that comes to your mind, okay? The words are positioning, punish, and whiff. Okay, got it? Now, if the first game you thought of was Monster Hunter, then good, this video was made for you. And if your first thought was literally any fighting game ever made, then good, this video was also made for you. The game you thought of could also be a third, secret, more sinister thing. But we'll get to it later. For now, let's focus on these two entities and their overlap. I mean, isn't it just absurd how a two-dimensional, two-player fighting game and a 3D action RPG have anything in common? Well, yes, but also no. In order to see that, we would need to compare Monster Hunter to the other games in its genre. Most and foremost, Monster Hunter has no character leveling system aside from your hunt to rank, which is actually only there to unlock content and doesn't impact your character in any way, shape or form. And already, I want you to sift through all the action RPGs you've played or heard of in which there is no leveling up. No, really, I want you to think of an RPG in which your character never levels up and never gains any new moves or abilities. You did?
You didn't! Because it's not there!
On the other hand, not leveling up does sound mighty similar to another genre of games, But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In Monster Hunter, progression is only really done through equipment, be it your weapon, armor, or consumables. And even then, in the late game, you can grind each of these to hell and back, and it still wouldn't be enough. Between Elatreon's elemental DPS check and Fatalis' egregious hitboxes and damage, there is no other choice for the player than to simply get good. I know this expression is pretty polarizing, which is understandable since half the people who use it do so in a condescending manner. But I truly do not believe it should be viewed as such. Instead, it should be seen as go beyond what tools the game gives you to progress and become better yourself through your eyes, your brain, and your fingers. Train them so that the improvement does not exist inside the game state alone, but within yourself. Now I won't pretend this is unique to Monster Hunter and fighters. This is shared across most video games and almost any and all things in life. However, I want you to focus on the process in which it is done. In contrast with the aim training and synergizing for FPS games, or concentrating on map awareness and decision making for MOBAs, Monster Hunter focuses more on what you can do in a neutral position. Your best bet in a neutral state would be to position yourself in a place where you can make the monster miss their attacks just by walking away, allowing you to hit them during the recovery of said attack. There are nuances to this of course, like if the monster uses an unexpected move, or if he has a follow-up to the first attack. Or if the move has so much range you can't attack them before they've recovered. And so it isn't as one-dimensional as I just described, but you get the point. Now, let me summarize my last few points so that you can hopefully see what I'm seeing here. Monster Hunter is an action RPG in which there is no character leveling up system unlike most other ARPGs. Instead, the game demands you become better at it through a deep understanding of the game itself. This deeper understanding manifests in the mastery of animation lock heavy gameplay in addition to positioning relative to the monster which lets the hunter easily bait attacks out, make them whiff and punish them with a combo that is appropriate to the attack they whiffed. This is the single most fighting game sounding ARPG I've ever heard of. So much so that if I didn't know about Monster Hunter and you gave me the same summary I just gave you, I would just think it's some weird janky asymmetrical fighting game where one of the players just uses a large boss character that can't be knocked out of their animations. However, even though it looks like a fighting game, swims like a fighting game, and quacks like a fighting game, it is understandably not a fighting game. The best example I can give to highlight the differences between Monster Hunter and fighters is the following. Imagine you are playing a fighting game online against other people, and suddenly your younger sibling who knows nothing about fighting games comes to you and tells you that they want to try that cool game you're playing. Being the nice older brother or sister that you are, you pass them the other controller in order to play a few sets. As mentioned, your sibling doesn't know the first thing about fighting games, but because you don't really feel like babysitting them and letting them win, you think up of an idea to even the odds. You tell them to pick the boss character and you set the handicap so that you die in 4 to 5 hits, and their health bar is bigger than yours. like many times bigger. Like 300 times bigger. Great. With this example, we have produced the closest thing you can get to Monster Hunter in a fighting game. Now let's get to analyzing the situation here. Your sibling, being the stupid little toddler that they are, will probably just be mashing buttons, or at best, keep doing the same move for a whole round just because it looks cool, no matter how many times you show them that it is not a good idea. This parallels the monster's AI, which really just does attacks because you are at a certain direction and angle from it, regardless of how many times you punish them. This lack of adaptation is the biggest difference between the two games. In fighting games, changing what you do during a match in response to your opponents and vice versa is a key component. That's where the concepts of adapting and layers and reads come from. Not to mention the fact that the monsters very rarely react to your attacks, negating the idea and relevance of frame data in the game. For Monster Hunter, I do believe that frames are only used to measure iframes and other niche stuff like guard points if you're nerdy enough, whereas in fighting games, frame data is a core part of the game. It dictates who gets to press. It is used to balance moves, which for example would be broken if they were safe, or quicker, or whatever. These two aspects, among a few others, will inevitably cause a divide between the two genres. And that's okay. Monster Hunter is not actually a fighting game, and Tekken and Street Fighter are not RPGs. But what if I told you that there is a franchise of games that, in my personal opinion, almost completely bridged the gap between the two genres? Now, I want you to venture a wild guess into what this game could possibly be. It's Dark Souls. You saw the thumbnail, it's good old Dark Souls. While making this video, I was a bit unsure about this take. Am I completely mental for comparing Dark Souls PvP to fighting games? But to my delight, I was not the only person who thought about it. If you go on YouTube, you'll find a number of people who defend the same viewpoint. Sure, this isn't a large number of people by any means, but I still take solace in the fact that I'm not the only one who had this idea. Picking up from where we left off, I was saying that the lack of adaptation by the monster's AI to the player on one hand, and the inexistence of frame data due to the absence of hit stun on the other, make it so that Monster Hunter can never really be considered a fighting game in any meaningful way. However, Dark Souls has something that Monster Hunter doesn't have and probably never will. And that is PvP. Just the act of pitting two players against each other gives birth to so many notions that are relevant to both Dark Souls mechanics and fighting game concepts. From the guessing game on Wake Up to avoid chain stabs in Dark Souls 1, to the build variety of Dark Souls 2, to the evolution of the Dark Souls 3 meta, not to mention the sheer amount of tech and strategy that's available to each of the players at any given moment that would give actual fighting games a run for their money. And even though Souls games do not have complete frame data, startup frames for attacks are readily available. And the existence of natural combos, in addition to the advantage gained when landing a hit, make it so that Dark Souls PvP could be somewhat seen under the lens of the frame-by-frame play that is characteristic of fighting games. With these things in mind, it could be said that Dark Souls is probably the closest thing we'll get to a PvP fighting game RPG, in contrast to Monster Hunter, which is the closest we'll get to an entertaining PvE fighting game RPG. So, to go over everything that has been said in this video, Monster Hunter is very similar to fighting games in many ways, including but not limited to positioning, whiff punishment, and studying the opponent's character, which is the monster. It does not, however, bridge the gap to fighting games, with the obstacles being the asymmetry of fights and lack of adaptation by the monster. However, it is proven that if these obstacles were to be removed, such as what has been done with Dark Souls PvP, it would then truly have the workings of a fighting game. Your Honor, Monster Hunter is a not really, but if you think about it and change some things, then it would be kinda a fighting game. I rest my case.
Oh no!